right, and this is the End Show, and I'm your host, Gus Summers. We got another great show. We have in-studio guest, Richard Yaker, and he's going to be talking to us about his law of practical attraction. All right, Richard, thank you again for being here with us. How's it going today?
Good, very good.
All right, so I know there's a lot of interest in this, and I know we've talked about many things in the past, and this is something that I've wanted to bring you onto the show about and kind of save, because I like to, for it to be fresh when we talk. So why don't you give us a little summary of it, and then we can get more into the details as we talk.
So law of attraction is a metaphysical philosophy that basically says that we have a role in creating the reality we live in. And therefore, rather than the universe being either something that's against you and a evil place or whatever, or even a totally random thing without control, it's something where you really have a lot more control over what goes on around you and your life than we are usually led to believe growing up in Western society. A lot of when you do any kind of research into religions and the major philosophies of the world, the basis of all of them really comes from the same place. And this kind of takes that in a kind of more modern, non-denominational interpretation of that stuff and makes it kind of practical to actually apply to your life, to have more control over what's happening.
Okay, all right. So, and I really enjoy, what I read on your site and such. And I like the name, the practical law of attraction, which, now correct me if I'm wrong, speaks that it is for everyday use, and it's for everyone. You don't necessarily have to be into quantum mechanics and mathematics and, religions of all sorts. It's something that we can use every day. Am I correct?
Yeah. And the reason I called it practical is because there's also a lot of kind of foo-foo spiritual stuff where people think it's magic and that kind of thing. And my background is in electrical engineering. I'm a software engineer, and my day job right now is as a manager managing software engineering. I'm a very practical person. I'm not a spiritual crazy kind of person who I do live in Venice, but right. You wouldn't typically meet me and think this guy's off his rocker and,
right.
and whatever.
Yes.
So when I learned about this stuff, it was the practical aspects of it and the fact that you could kind of experiment in your own life and see if it really works for you.
Yes.
And the basis is basically that everything has vibration. And from a science perspective, although you don't need to get into that, everything is made out of atoms, and atoms are really a lot of vacuum and space and balls kind of circling around at high speed. They have a frequency, and kind of everything has a frequency. And so the idea is that things of a like frequency, of similar energy, kind of come together. And so, if you're sad, that gives off a particular energy, and if you're happy, that gives off a particular energy. And, there are all kinds of anecdotal phrases like birds of a feather flock together, and when it rains, it pours, that society has kind of come up with that really describe how this really works, although nobody thinks of it that way. So the basic principle is that if you work on choosing your thoughts so that you are thinking more happy thoughts and you find things you like and enjoy and you get into a good emotional place, that your life starts to go better and the things that you dream about and would like to have happen begin to start happening in your life. And when I first started doing this and people would talk to me about it, I'd say, and what's the worst that happens is you get happy and none of the other stuff happens.
Right.
Which, has its own benefits, even if you don't get more money and get the new job or meet the girl of your dreams. If you manage to get in a better mood, that's its own benefit.
Right. Yeah. But now suddenly, if like you were saying, if you're in a happy mood, then everything seems to be more cheery, brighter. You hear the birds chirping and the sun shines through. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, basically, even if you don't believe a lot of the quote-unquote magical kind of stuff, from any perspective and any kind of psychological perspective, the reality is all about perspective. And so how you're looking at things and how you hear things and what you see and how you interpret what goes on around you is your reality. And if you're in a better mood, that all seems better and goes better.
Right. And then those around you are in a better mood because you're happy. You say hello or engage in conversation, what have you. Now, I know you are a coach. People call you, your phone number and web information's on your website and everything. And this is advice that you give.
Yes.
And so when someone is, I know, reading, posts and getting emails and, different messages and such, you hear, sometimes you can hear the downcast in the message. And so when someone approaches you, because I want to ask, specific little questions like that throughout our show. So someone comes to you and says, we'll just do it in a general fashion. I have been depressed or have always been kind of a gray person. Things sometimes work for me, sometimes don't. And I'm sure you probably hear quite something like that all the time. Starting off with that kind of person, things have always been kind of down for me. What one thing can I do? Or what would you suggest? Or one thing?
So one of the things I ask a lot of questions.
Right. Good.
My coaching style is really getting into a conversation with somebody to find out how they're really thinking, because it's their thinking that causes that kind of stuff. First of all, depending on how old you are, regardless of the fact that you might come and have this perspective that your life's kind of sucked so far and that you've been in kind of a downer, if you're still here, you've survived all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And you could kind of take an inventory of your life from, trying to not look at it from that gray point of view and look at how you came through all the bad stuff.
Okay.
And, if you're still around by a certain point, you've gone through kind of ups and downs, and you've managed to survive all the downs, and which means that in the end everything turned out okay.
So you might have an existing tool already. Well, obviously one would have some sort of tool. It's just about finding it, basically.
Right, going through kind of an inventory of life and seeing that you've survived certain downtimes in your life, kind of tells you that you make it through that stuff. And so that's a good starting point for certain people.
Oh, okay.
If they're really, as you said, they come from that perspective of my life's kind of sucked so far and I've been kind of depressed most of my life. Well, you've made it this far, and so you've gotten through a bunch of stuff. So, if they're coming from that far a negative place, that's a good starting point. Depending on what their perspective is, there are various starting points.
Right. Okay. Excellent. So, in regards to that question, if it's someone who is as far out in their self-image as we're describing, one key would be to find whatever it is that helped them get through those difficult, or that's helped them get this far. So obviously they have something because they're surviving.
Right.
And whatever that may be. It may be
and
music.
And they may not
or
realize
book.
what it is. They may not even know. And just the fact that they did make it through those times and that things weren't as bad, therefore, as they thought because they managed to survive it and it didn't take them out.
Yes.
That's enough of a good starting place to see that the world is not against them and not such a bad place, and that they have more tools and capability than they originally thought.
Hey, fantastic. So Jack Palance kind of had it when he said in City Slickers, that one thing. Try to find that one thing. Remember that movie? Billy Crystal said, what is it? That one thing. What is that? What is that? So find that one thing that helps you survive.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Hey, Richard, it's great having you here. And I know it's I think you just put into words something practical that people can use. Hey, appreciate it. Thanks for coming in. We're gonna do a lot more of that in our next segment. Thank you. All right. Well, this is Gus Summers, and you've been listening to the In Show, and we have in-studio guest Richard Yaker, and we are discussing his practical law of attraction. And right now, he says, look for that one thing that's helped you survive thus far. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. This is the In Show, and I'm your host, Gus Summers. Good to be back with you today. We got another great show. We have in-studio guest Richard Yaker, and he is discussing his practical law of attraction. Richard, again, thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
So in our last segment, we talked about if someone comes to you who has a very poor negative self-image, and one of your suggestions was to find one thing that has helped them survive thus far because they've made it through or are continuing to make it through their negative situation, and find that one thing that enables them to do that. Am I right?
Yeah, that's a good starting point.
Okay. So, I know we're talking in generalities here, but I know people are really interested, especially, the economic times. And I know there are a lot of listeners who are artists, who have great talent, who are, musicians, singers, painters, writers, and sometimes, that's a roller coaster ride. And, you may see your good friend suddenly join a band, and that band takes off, or someone sells a piece of art, and you're like, well, what happened, So, I know they are looking for something that will aid them in this journey into, I guess, a brighter place. So, that being the case, so we talked about someone who is extremely negative. Now, what are some of your other suggestions, or what are some of the other personalities that you have seen who've come seeking coaching from you?
Well, you brought up artists, and so one of the negative self-images that a lot of artists have is the starving artist, and that yes. You have to, either that good art comes from suffering, or that just in general it's hard to be an artist.
Right. And
that's a perspective, and that's a frame of mind, and if that person really looked at it and their friend got in a band that took off, they'd probably see that person didn't believe it. When you, when you hear about people who have made it, Oprah being a great example, or some musician who whatever, they talk about how they dreamed of being on the big stage, and they always saw themselves succeeding. And right. When you really get down to it, all those people that succeed have those same stories. And right. So it really does, although they'll say I worked real hard and other stuff, yes. the common denominator is more that they saw themselves succeeding, and they dreamed about it, and they didn't allow themselves to kind of get into that thought process of I'm a poor, starving artist, and I'm always going to be poor, and I have to suffer to be an artist, and that kind of stuff. So, you look for ways to, within your art, to feel good and to enjoy the process of the art, and you take that, nobody's going to buy this, and people don't pay for these things off the table, and you don't think of those things, and you don't go there, and right. you see that things get better. There are ways of the person comes out of the woodwork to buy your stuff, or you get a job that's related to your art that pays the bills while your art's happening, and and all of those kind of things, and those things just happen when you stop kind of beating the drum of I'm a poor starving artist, and you know.
Yes. So what I hear you saying is that I'm a poor starving artist. I'm the tortured artist. By being that way, I produce great art, and it's trying to get out of that by producing great art by being positive. So those positive vibrations, positive those positive forces come to you. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a starving torture artist. I produce great art. I am a good artist,
And I enjoy working on my art.
Right.
It brings me joy to paint. It brings me joy to make music. And instead of focusing on the lack of money or the suffering, I focus on the joy I get from doing the art.
Right. And is it also that for an artist, it could say, and I enjoy when someone appreciates it or enjoys it. They buy it. Oh, I love it. So it's about circling yourself with this joy. Okay.
Totally.
Okay. All right. So it's not. I know. You talk to. I talk to different artists as well. Sometimes it's about the fame and fortune, but it's not what you're talking about. It's not about being on stage, everyone's applauding your name. It's about if you're a singer, you're seeing how they appreciate and they connect with you as the songs that you sing and the joy that expressed in their faces when they sing your song or when they see your art. So that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and really getting into that and milking it for all that it's worth.
Yes. And then so how would you? So I guess you would basically call that a joy reference, working for joy.
Yeah, I mean, I would speak to the person about what about making your art makes you happy? What do you enjoy about the process? What do you enjoy about when you create something? How does it make you feel when somebody likes your song or actually, or you hear them singing along or something like that, and get them to really get into that feeling and talk about it to really reach for that. And that's what they're really after.
Right. So I get, and again, it's not necessarily just an artist, because anything can be viewed as art. Because I know people get really into when they write code, and they're like, wow, look at it. You talk to these people. I mean, I talked to so many people, and I appreciate everyone. I love talking to everybody because I do the same thing. I see above it and see, wow, I can see the passion that you have for bowling or writing code, and it's like, wow, that's you want to connect with that. Am I correct?
I mean, that's really what everybody's after. They're whether you know it or not, everybody is after feeling good.
Yes.
And having enough money to pay your bills and eat and not be stressed is feeling good. And so is it when you're bowling if you're into bowling, or surfing if you're into surfing, or riding your bike on a nice day, or any of those kind of things. You're after a feeling of enjoyment and passion, and getting people to connect to that is really what this brings in the other stuff and brings more of what you're looking for.
Right. So that's what you want to connect to is and do it in a consistent manner.
And that's where the work is, because society in general and certain cultures tend to focus on the negative, and so it's this negative mind chatter and stuff and guilt and other things that we've been trained to by society or our families that take over most of our thinking. And if we cultivate and practice this kind of consistent finding our joy, things go better in your life.
Right. So it's like that old saying thing. Great minds think alike. So if you can change the phrase where it's joyful people think alike. So once you find, I like that, because once you find what makes you happy in whatever you're doing, you pursue that thing over and over because it will never deplete, because it's a constant joy. You enjoy doing it. It's when we don't do something that people start to get drowned down. Am I correct?
Right. Correct.
Okay. So it's not like we were talking about when you were talking about musicians. It's not about fame and fortune, but it's about the joy that they give and the joy they receive.
I mean, there are some people that get caught up in the fame and fortune, or there are people who, because they haven't found what they're really passionate about, and they see how people who have fame and fortune live, that they decide that that's what they're after. But
Yes.
those people have something that brings them passion too, and everybody kind of has that, whatever that is. Some people may not know it because it's been drowned out of them, or their parents told them it wasn't practical, they should
Right.
focus on this or focus on that.
Yes.
But once you find what brings you that passion, that's really what you're after.
Oh, wow. And like what you're saying about these, people who are rich and famous, that's only the front that we see. That's where they have great publicists. Oh, what a great charity they give to, and what a it's who knows, by walking that mile in their shoes, you're like, well, this is not really what I wanted. I wanted that fantasy, which you think it's joy. This will make me happy. But if you find it in yourself, right, and that's basically what you're saying.
Yeah, and it does come. I mean, basically, all the great philosophers, if you get into that kind of stuff, really point to that happiness is a choice we make.
Yes.
And how we look at things, and how we talk about things, and how we focus on things is what makes us either happy or unhappy. And if you the great thing about this whole philosophy, and you kind of start to get evidence of it, is that if you get happy, you then get all those things you want also.
Right. So to tie it in to our last segment, first you find the thing that helped you survive, and then now at this point you find the thing that brings you joy. Wow, look at that. That's what people need to hear. That's what people, and then just constantly thinking about that attracts like-minded vibrations and like-minded people in
and events that bring you more joy and all of that kind of thing.
Wow, that's I know that's what a lot of people are looking for. Hey, Richard, again, thank you for coming in, and sharing this with us. I know a lot of people are really starving for something like this. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Well, this is Gus Summers, and you've been listening to The In Show. And we have in-studio guest Richard Yaker, and he's been talking to us about his great practical laws of attraction. All right. Well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get right into the show. So we'll be right back.